Hi, this is Shauna, the CEO and founder of Fuel Talent. One of the things I have loved most in my 25-year recruiting career has always been the stories that people tell. Stories of leadership, career choices, company ideas, and team building. My inspiration for starting the What Fuels You podcast came from being curious about people's lives and wanting to help share their stories. What path brought them to this place? What decisions did they make that led to failures and successes? Who influenced those decisions, and what lessons were learned along the way? I hope you enjoy the What Fuels You podcast. Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is Bob Bagga. Bob is an entrepreneur, financial technology innovator, and barter exchange pioneer based in the Seattle area. He is the co-founder, CEO, and president of BizX, a network of businesses that trade with each other without spending any cash. Founded after the 9/11 attacks, BizX helps businesses connect and forge new and potentially long-lasting relationships where they can support one another, particularly during times of crisis. Prior to founding BizX, Bagga launched the Barter Business Exchange, which facilitated more than $60 million in trading volume per year and involved more than 4,000 member companies, including high-profile brands such as Rogers Communication, Revlon, and Kodak. He also served as the COO of UBarter, a consumer-focused online barter program and platform. Bagga has been recognized with various awards, including Puget Sound Business Journal's 40 Under 40, the Exceptional Leadership Award from the Young Presidents Organization, and various honors from the International Reciprocal Trade Association. He currently lives in Seattle, Washington area with his family. Welcome, Bob.
Thanks for having me, Shauna.
That's an impressive bio and intro. I'm like, wow, this guy is just like boom, boom, boom. It's all about the barter.
That's what I've been fortunate enough to do. And I just love working with businesses and connecting them. And we've been innovating at this for so many years.
Yeah, we were good at it. Okay, before we get into it, because I can't wait to talk about BizX. As you know, I'm a BizX user. I want to talk about you as a child, but even before we do that, I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire. You ready?
Okay. Here we go.
I know you love to travel, so I'm curious, now that the pandemic and people are getting vaccinated, where's the first place you want to go? Where are you going to travel?
I want to go to Australia with my family. I've not been there. And then Italy. My wife has been dying to go to Italy.
Yeah, both places I've been and highly recommend both. Awesome. What words would your kids use to describe you?
Old.
You're not old. If you're old, then I'm old.
Oh, they make fun of me all the time. I think they would say, I'm fun to be around.
Yeah, I think your friends would say that too. Okay, what's the craziest thing that you've ever seen bartered through the business?
Oh, wow. We've seen so many things. People have bought and sold so many things, but we've hundreds of weddings, and I just remember the thing that struck me the most is we had a member whose cat was dying and she didn't have money, and we were able to give her a line of credit and we saved the cat. So that was like the most heartfelt thing we were able to do. The veterinarian was able to do that. And then we had somebody else who was actually had cancer, and they were super bummed out about it. And they were affiliated with BizX. I think indirectly they were an employee, but we bought them. Tony Robbins is a BizX member, and so we sent them to one of the Tony Robbins seminars with their best friend. And 2 years later, she said she was healed. But I think there was just
I didn't know Tony. I'm getting that. I didn't know Tony Robbins. I could get that. That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I might know the answer to this, but if you could be a famous actor, writer, musician, or athlete, which one would you choose?
Oh, which one? I think now I'd be a musician because my son is a musician. And so
that's actually what I was thinking. I'm like, I see your son jam out on his guitar and sing, and I'm like, maybe that's...
If it was a few years ago, it might have been different, but I'm all about the music now.
You would have been an athlete a few years ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're a big sports fan. So, okay, what do you like to read, watch, or listen to?
I love reading. John Grisham is one of my favorite authors. And then Michael Lewis.
Oh,
Liar's
good.
Poker. Yeah,
I'm like Googling it right now. Yeah, Michael Lewis.
he has a new book that's out. Flash Boys is another one. So those are two that I really like. And then
Okay,
it's
good to
hard
know.
it's hard to watch things now. So, but there's usually like a good HBO
Yeah.
or a series is good.
I
There's a
have
new
no
one on
problem watching, so I will send you a list.
Apple Plus is a new one that was really good called Tehran, which is really cool. It's about
I've
the
watched
cat.
Tehran. Yeah.
Isn't it? It's like the cat and mouse game. It's like just had
Yeah.
me on the edge of my seat. So
Yeah. Well, now that I know
thrilling.
you like Tehran, I'll send you some other options.
Okay.
Okay. What's your biggest fear?
Oh, um, I am afraid of heights and
All
confined
right.
spaces.
Okay. Well, so you're claustrophobic. I get that. What would you most like to photograph? I know you're a photographer.
Oh yeah. Well, I like landscape and I like places. So I'd love to go to like the pyramids of Egypt. I've been there, but like take my camera and and photograph those. Or but I think what would be really cool to photograph is being able to go back in time and photograph somebody like like Gandhi or Mother Teresa or
Oh, yeah. How
like
cool
some
would that
really
be?
inspirational people and
Yeah.
catching that look.
Yeah. Okay, here's my final question, and then we'll dig into your childhood. Okay. What would you say people most often misunderstand about you?
Oh,
Or
uh,
what would be a misconception?
wow. I think who I am, like I think I like to have a lot of fun, but I think there's some depth there. So if you don't know me, you get quote unquote fun Bobby, and but I think there's some. I think also I'm really passionate about what I do, so I probably end up talking about it sometimes more than I, you know. So I
No,
think
it's good. It's
there's
funny
a
that you say
deeper.
that. The first answer is actually what I thought it would be, which is like because you always bring it and you always bring the fun. So tell me, like, so weird that I've known you for so long and
Yeah,
obviously a BizX member and friend, and I don't know like about your childhood. Where did you grow
yeah.
up?
So I was born in New Delhi, India, and my parents, I like to say, exported me to Canada at the early age of 1. So I grew up in Toronto for our first 5 years, and then my dad moved to a small town of like 24,000 people, just north of Toronto, about an hour away. So kind of this, and we'd be back and forth between the big city of Toronto and a small town.
Hmm. And your parents were
And
married or divorced?
yeah, no, they're married.
So, oh, okay. So he
They're
just moved you to
yeah.
a small.
They moved. Yeah, they moved together. So,
Mm,
um,
yeah.
and that was in the early '70s. And yeah, it was by fluke. We ended up in Canada. My dad met somebody in India, and who convinced him. He'd done his master's in social work, and he was the first one in his family. One of the first ones in his family to go to college, and he got this opportunity to move to Canada. And at that time, you're only allowed to leave India with $8 in your pocket. That's what you're allowed to come with.
Are you like an only child or do you have siblings?
Now I have a younger sister, Priya. She's 5 years younger than me, and she lives in Toronto.
I don't know anything about the school. Like, is that
Yeah,
just where people go from
yeah.
Toronto?
So York University, and it's known for it's in Toronto. It's known for business. And I was going to kind of one of my first entrepreneurial stories was on campus. We had so at York University, they built a new. It's about 50,000 students, so it's a big school, and they did a big real estate development, and so they had hundreds of thousands of square feet of retail, so big bookstore and shopping and pool hall and restaurants, and so I opened up a record store there while I was
Oh
in
my gosh.
college called Twist and Shout, and so yeah, that was kind of cool. And I was going to go to law school, and
Yeah.
wrote my LSAT, and decided to abandon that and then start this company.
So why law school? Is that something that like, did your parents say this is kind of the route or is it you knew a lawyer? How come you thought that that's what you wanted to do?
So I think growing up, kind of taking back, I was always an entrepreneur. So if I remember, my first job was a paper route, and going door to door, and then your school's got different programs. So it's funny that I had my paper out, but then when we had, we're selling our Boy Scout candy or we're doing something else, so I had a built-in customer base. So that was always really good to be able to go to them. I enjoyed connecting and talking with people. And one of my first entrepreneurial ventures was then after the paper out was I started a company called Teen Work, where we were mowing and cutting lawns for other people. So rather than cutting lawns myself, then we had for a couple of summers, a crew that would go out and do.
So you were the connector of like, hey, I've got the customers now. Let me hire the other people and then take a piece of the business. That's
exactly.
super, super smart. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And so were you like a good student growing up?
I could always be a little better student, but I think I could. I'm sure my kids are going to listen to this, but there's always room for improvement. So.
It's like when you do have that entrepreneurial spirit and that ability to bring in and nurture relationships with customers, I almost feel like you're just fine. Like you're off to the races. Any business needs that skill set. And so I don't really necessarily worry about the grades, although it does, in theory, open up doors, right?
Yeah, no, I had to have good, I'm East Indian. I had to have good grades. There was no discussion.
Yeah. Tell me about that culturally. Like when you say you're East Indian, is that a big part of your identity? And what does that mean to you?
I think it was a bigger part of my identity growing up. Now, remember, we grew up in a small town of 24,000 people. So we were probably one of the only, there's probably, I could count on one hand the families of visible minority or color. So I remember coming home from kindergarten and saying, Mom, what's a Paki? So that was early in. And so you visibly stood out. You knew you were different. But then we'd go to Toronto and we'd have a, kind of extended family, other friends, and you culturally learn. Now I went to, one of the coolest things I got to do as a kid is I got to go to India every summer. My parents they'd load up the suitcases, we'd drive to Toronto and then fly to India for the summer. And I'm like, why can't I go to Disneyland like all my other
You're like, I don't really want to be going to India.
I know, and you'd show up in India and you're like, there's no air conditioning and the food and it's getting bit by mosquitoes, and it was just like, and I'm like, why are we doing this? Now I go back, and my parents were very insistent, like learning the language, the culture. They really pushed it on us.
And are you doing that with your kids?
No, I have not. And so, but I really appreciated that. And we'd go back. So every summer we'd go back. In the 12th, when I was in 7th grade, I wrote a letter to, I was leaving school early. I had to do a social studies project. So I wrote a letter to Indira Gandhi, who was then the prime minister. And I said, hey, I live in Canada. I'm from India. I still had kept my Indian citizenship at this time, and I'd love to meet you. So I show up in India, and when I get there, there's a message waiting for me that, she wants to meet you. So it's Friday, August the 13th, I think 1980. I got 90 minutes with her.
What?
And we talked about everything. And I had aspirations at one time of like wanting to go into politics, going into Indian politics. And so it was really cool to connect with her. And we have an audio recording of it somewhere.
That's amazing.
We talked about corruption and what does it take to be a leader. At the time, I don't know if you remember, there was a Falkland Islands War going on. And I remember, so where does India stand on the Falkland? I was like kind of being a little journalist interviewing her, and I had these questions typed up. I think we used a typewriter back then. And so she said, well, all the developing countries are supporting Great Britain. And she's like, no, that's too controversial a question because, India is officially a neutral country. So she wouldn't answer that question. But it was, we talked about corruption. I said, what about corruption? It's so bad. She said, well, you can see the corruption here, but there's a lot of corruption everywhere. But then fast forward. So this was in August. I got woken on October 31st, the same year. I'd come back to Toronto or Canada. I got woken up at like 4 a.m. It was a CBC News calling me, Indira Gandhi's died. Please give us she was shot by her own bodyguards and murdered. And there was like massive riots through the streets of India. They wanted my comment. And I'm like, I'm 13 years old.
That's crazy. How did they even get your contact info?
Well, they had known that I had met her, and I'd done a couple of interviews when I'd come back. So
Wow.
that was, but it was like, whoa. And just seeing what was going on, there's like this just massive rioting and looting, and people were getting killed. It was so sad. But that's when I kind of realized, I think at the time, early on, I had this idea of going into politics, and that's where I followed Canadian politics quite a bit. But after a while, I realized that, you know, the guys that are the politicians, that's not where I wanted to be. And I didn't think
Yeah.
that you could be effective doing that. And I think it's a
Yeah.
thankless job. So,
I think it's a thankless job too. So as
yeah.
you raise your kids, you've got 3, right?
Yeah.
And as you raise them, because for me, I'm more leaning into it than ever. And when you talk about being different, how does that translate for you as far as how you're raising your kids to be proud of being Indian?
Yeah, I think. I think today we live in a different. It's different here, and I think we just talk about it in a sense where you respect everybody, and it doesn't matter what you look like, where you came from. We're all the same, and
Mm-hmm.
and we should have an equal amount of respect. And so, I think we've talked about it, but at the same time, it's the behavior you model, and I think they see that. So
Yeah, well, definitely because you guys are so much love towards everyone. And I think that that's totally true, to just constantly exemplify the type of people that you want to raise. And you guys are definitely doing that. I was just asking because it's coming up left and right from different friends. And
yeah,
I see you as somebody who's a leader and a model in our community and a great dad. And so for me, selfishly, I'm always just trying to get little nuggets from people like, you're doing it right. You've got these amazing children. What can we learn? And yeah, that makes sense. So tell me, okay, let's go back to, you went to school, you did this record store, and
yeah.
were you going to kind of keep that store, or did you get lured away into this bartering
Yeah, so I had
business?
a friend who had kind of said, "Hey, I've got this idea," and I said, "Well, how does this work?" And we sat down, we got together, and I started this. We ended up starting this company. We borrowed $10,000. We started this company called Barter Business Exchange, and I left my mom. My mom, who's like running. Can you imagine your mom running a record store? And so she could tell you more about Madonna, U2, Prince, the Rolling Stones, because it's like, okay, mom, you're handling this and you're running it. I had a passion for music and electronics, and it was just a great location. An entrepreneur. That's why we opened it. And then we were thinking about law school, and so started this company and said, okay, where is it going to go? Well, it was successful beyond our wildest dreams and really took off. And we were the 46th fastest growing company in Canada.
Wow.
And did some really really cool things, and grew it. And then in 1998, there was a company, is actually based out of Seattle, that was working on some internet technology called UBarter. And so we put the two companies together and we took it public as ubarter.com. And then shortly after, I was coming out here only for 6 months. And shortly after, it was we got bought out by, I don't know if you remember Network Commerce,
Yeah,
shopnow.com.
yeah.
So he bought the whole thing. And so we kind of closed that deal, I think, in early 2000.
Yeah, and you stayed.
Yeah, I stayed in Seattle. So I left there. I stayed in Seattle. What really caught me was interesting is that when I came here, I just remember how dark and rainy it was. But then waking up one Saturday morning and seeing the sunshine in Mount Rainier, it's like, holy crow! Like, what the heck is this? And driving around, getting lost, and just kind of slowly falling in love with the surroundings here.
Yeah.
And then I met one of the first people I met when I moved to Seattle was your brother
Oh,
through EO.
seriously?
Yeah, because I was part of EO at the time. It was YEO Toronto, so I moved to this chapter, and Scott was hosting. I went to the Howard Schultz event at Starbucks that he was hosting, which was super cool, back in '99 or 2000, and I
Yeah.
just moved here. and yeah, he was, like I said, yeah, one of the first people I met.
He's such a promoter of BizX. It's incredible. I mean, he's like Mr. BizX. Everybody knows. They're like, he loves it. It's so great.
So yeah, he was one of the first guys I met, and then I joined the EO chapter here, and I was doing some other things, and then September 11th hit, and I remember how bad it was, and it was October 2001. I was in my forum meeting in Kirkland, downtown Kirkland, and everybody was complaining about how bad business was, and kind of freaking out because like nothing was happening. And so I was sharing from my experience, as you do in forum. Hey, one of the ways you could help each other is you could trade with one another because you don't have to use cash. And so by the end of the meeting, my forum mates had convinced me to get back into this business. So we started BizX.
Oh, that's awesome. And how's BizX going? Like tell the listeners who don't know BizX, like what it does and what the business model is.
So BizX in its core is, we're a modern day digital barter exchange. Barter is the oldest form of doing business. Kind of predates money. I'll give you something, you give me something, but that's not
like
very
I'll give you my daughter and you give me a goat.
Yeah. Or I need a dentist and I'll give you a goat. So
yeah.
But the thing is, I don't eat meat, so I don't eat a goat. So that's why money was invented. And so today we've got over 7,000 businesses that are on our platform that all trade goods and services amongst each other. So now, for example, if you're a restaurant and you need, $5,000 worth of plumbing, rather than having to reach into your bank account and write a check, basically you could pay for it with $5,000 in meals to new customers that you wouldn't have had using our own currency, BizX dollars. So that's the premise behind it, and ultimately the strength within BizX is the members that support each other because they drive new business to each other. And so the big, at the end of the day, it's how do we drive new customers and better cash flow? That's the
to help people protect their balance sheets. And I'm sure this past year with the pandemic I'm super interested in hearing about it. But I first want to understand, so what exactly is the business model? Like, how does BizX make money?
Yeah. So we've got a community of businesses, and they all use, rather than using US dollars, they use BizX dollars as a supplement. It's kind of your extra business, right? So you've got a restaurant, you've got 100 tables. Quite frequently, you're selling you're usually selling out 80, you've got 20 empty. It's a way to fill up those extra 20 tables. And so it doesn't replace your existing business. It's all incremental and extra business. The BizX business model is we basically take a transaction fee. So we get paid a transaction fee when BizX sends other BizX members new customers that they wouldn't have had, and that's how we make our money.
And what's the most common thing that you have to overcome day in and day out? Is it explaining the business?
Yeah, I think people sometimes barter are we trying to avoid taxes? No, it's above board. We issue a 1099. Oh, I don't, my business isn't in trouble. I don't need to use it. And you don't need to be, because some of our the most successful people that use our business are the ones that are the strongest companies, because they're looking to gain a competitive edge and gain more customers or increase their cash flow further. So I think it's just there. Sometimes what we find is our customers or prospective members fall into a couple of camps. Either A, they think this is the most amazing thing because they realize that this is a smart way to
preserve cash,
preserve cash, increase cash flow. The second camp you run into is people that just that they're much more skeptical, or they need a little bit more information on it. But it falls into one or the other, and it is a bit of a like riding a bike. So once you get, and our best members are the ones that were the most skeptical, because
well, of course, once they get it, they get it.
Oh, and they're
tell me about some. Yeah. Tell me about some creative ways that people use it. Because I feel like my brother's always got these creative ideas, and I'm sure there's many other people out there that are using it creatively. The obvious one is like a service for a service. But
Yeah.
are there other things that people can be doing that they may be sitting on things that they could put into the BizX
Yeah.
system?
Yeah. So there's two sides to BizX. You're either a buyer or a seller. You're going to be both, right? So you're going to be buying things and you're selling things. So from a sales perspective, if you run a business and you've got capacity, you can take on new customers. Like you're that restaurant that has 100 tables and could take on an extra 10, or you're an accountant and you have 8 hours in a day, but you're only full 6. You can take additional. You've got capacity to take new customers on. BizX is that other great way to do that. Now, beyond that, other ways that BizX people have earned BizX dollars is a lot of people have second homes, and so it's another way to rent out those second homes or selling. It could be selling. Recently, we've got members that are downsizing their offices, so they're getting rid of extra office furniture or computer, or it's another way to be able to move kind of anything of excess. We've helped people with subleases. So people right now are downsizing their offices. They're sitting with extra office space. They're going to sublease it rather than if it sit vacant. They could sublease it out using BizX dollars. So anywhere you've got capacity to use BizX dollars, it really is. It's the idea is, hey, before writing a check for anything, where could we use it? And that would lie both on the business and personal side of things. And so, from a business perspective, operational expenses, from everything from toner cartridge to advertising to even we have members paying part of their rent, et cetera, using BizX dollars. And then on a personal side of things, from braces for their kids' teeth to landscaping to taking dream vacations or employee incentives are all things that people have been able to use BizX for.
Yeah. Every time I talk to him, like, I got to get on the site and figure out what I'm not using that I should be using because I know I got some BizX dollars. So do you have business partners, or are you fully the owner of BizX?
I have a co-founder, Chris Hadawi. So we met actually when I started my last company. He's based out of the Bay Area, and we've known each other now almost 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And through the business, and he's a great friend, and we work close together. And then we have back in 2012, we took on a little bit of local investors as well.
Okay. And so when you first started it, though, you self-funded it?
Yeah, we bootstrapped it to almost $10 million in revenue.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so we very much so. It was we were cash flow positive. Very much bootstrapped. Starting the company.
Yeah.
Old school.
Where are you trying to take the business? Like, where's your ultimate? Like, I'm sure you feel successful now, but all entrepreneurs have that concept. Yeah. More and more. I need to have more customers.
Yeah, we're looking at it. How can we partner with and how can more of a platform play? And so we've got a great ecosystem, and where could we partner with existing communities of businesses where they could kind of come in and plug in, and where BizX could actually fuel an existing ecosystem. So we have our own ecosystem at BizX, but we also one of the things that we're looking at now is how can we become a platform to be able to go to an existing community of businesses and say, okay, here's another way that you can all do business with each other. Mm-hmm. And so we see that as an opportunity to be able to create more scalable growth, and being able to really, take this more regionally and then nationally and internationally.
Mm-hmm. And is there a revenue target in your mind that you're like, and then what would the kind of exit plan be? Or are you like me and you're not there yet? Like I get asked that all the time, and I'm like, I'm not there. Yeah. I'm still young. I'm only 50 almost.
We've got some ideas, probably a little too premature to share with the podcast, but I think, there's a lot of innovation happening in fintech today. And you look at it, if we talk 15 years ago and I said alternative currency, you kind of would look at me and go, huh?
Yeah. You mean
But
like
today,
Bitcoin and stuff?
well, today, the fact that you don't have, I think we were kind of really early to this party, but you don't, and there's a TED talk I think I gave at a EO university back in 2011. I'll share with you. But what I said was the way we're going to pay is going to change. And I think that will still continue to happen. And today, everything we do is US dollar based. Primarily, it's US dollar based, right? And then now you're seeing, okay, you can pay with points. That's another way to pay. And that's becoming much more and more predominant. I can pay with points at checkout. We can pay with Bitcoin. You know, Tesla was accepting Bitcoin until yesterday, but that's another way to pay. You can pay with BizX. And so I think we're going to see the evolution of just how transactions are going to happen. And, you know, you've got Apple Pay. That's still a credit card that goes to US dollars. But really think about how we're going to pay that's non-US dollar denominated. You're going to see many more options coming. And I think BizX is a very, very early pioneer there. And we're seeing a lot of other opportunities for that to come.
Yeah, I can see that. And so how's your team right now? Like, how has this past year impacted your business, and have you had to make any changes with your existing team?
Yeah, so yeah, we were impacted because, you know, we are all based on transactions with small and medium sized business. So come March, April, everything is shut down, and so our revenue, you know, comes down to a trickle at that time. But what we've seen is you know, the resiliency of our businesses is coming back stronger than ever, and so we were working primarily remote. We've just now started to come back into the office in sort of a hybrid, and we have many people that are still 100% remote. And we learned a lot of great things. Right now we've got about, you know, I think 5 open positions that we're trying to fill. We had to downsize a little bit, and now we're trying to scale up again as quickly as we can. But what a resilient team we have that has gone through this. And this team was working kind of round the clock from home, really helping these businesses with things that they needed, whether it was helping them get meals out to their employees, helping with PPP and masks and gloves, helping get the new website launch. You heard about all these great pivots that happened. Well, a lot of these pivots with these small, medium-sized businesses were funded using BizX, getting construction projects taken care of. So, you know, there's the Queen Anne Hotel in San Francisco that got completely remodeled, and they did it without a lick of cash. But we had our team in the background helping coordinate this. Or I know Montezuma's restaurants, they did also a number of big remodels or new websites coming out. And I've got to really take my hat off to our team because they were heads down and just helping these business owners. And they're, you know, you heard the stories because they're talking to these business owners day in, day out, and hearing some of the stories, and lots of tears, and there's fear as to what's going to happen. But I think as things, I would say come May, because I heard that, but come May when the PPP money started to hit people's bank accounts, the sentiment completely changed. But I would say until May, until that money started to go in, I would say I've never seen anything like it. The fear that I heard,
and it just happens so fast. I mean, I have friends who just lost so much of their business within like a 2-day window.
Yeah,
and especially in the hospitality industry. So it sounds like you've got this kind of solid core team. And how would you describe the values that matter most for an employee who's successful at BizX?
So, you know, our purpose, so we start with our purpose. Our purpose is to improve the lives and businesses of the communities we touch, the people we touch. So we're very much a very conscious, purpose-driven company. In fact, one of the things we've done is we have been taking this time, and we're actually right in the middle of this exercise where we've got the whole team, and we're talking about our values and saying, okay, what do we what do these really mean to people? Because as you grow, as an organization grows, we wanted to retest them to make sure that everybody was, hey, you get this, we're bought in, and do we need to make any tweaks? So we're making actually changes as we speak. It was a really cool exercise. We had an outside facilitator come in, really work with the team, and I kind of said, okay, go and the team came up with this, and they came back and then they shared. And I would say we're about 90% there, but it really allowed us to reaffirm our values. And one of our core values is think big, be bold, take action. Another value that's super important is do the right thing. I think we're tweaking that to say integrity and but basically do the right thing. Integrity. It's one of the things that is important to me when we say integrity is, yeah, I'm honest. That's important. But I say your words, your actions, your thoughts are all in line with each other, and what we say, what we do, what we think. That's super important. I would say we had a value called exceed expectations, and I think the team came back, and the one we're tweaking that to is excellence. And so the idea is everything we do is in this mind of excellence, and how do we deliver excellence? And I would say exceed expectations is a great way to describe that. And I would say these values are important not just to us, but how do we push those values out within the community? So that's important for us that they're not just, these values are not just for us, but they're also we're also pushing them out with the rest of the community, the users within BizX, and so that can live there as well.
Yeah. And so you said you've got these open positions. What is your thinking around kind of ensuring that you continue to have a diverse and thriving culture? Like what's the process for your recruiting, and how you basically just make sure that your employee base represents like the actual community?
Yeah, that's a good question. The first thing we did is we've got somebody other than me that's owning this process. So I've got a nice part of actually going through this whole process too is I was able to take myself out of a lot of these items, and so I've got a very strong team. Tom Oakes, our COO, and we've got operations manager that oversees HR, and I think this has been they've been very thoughtful about these items, and I think being able to really be inclusive with the rest of the team, and so having a process where they are in recruiting, it is it's kind of ends with me versus starting with me, in the sense where the team is going through and really being able to get the rest of the team's input, I think has been super important in doing that, and really making this a values-based hire as well when looking, and then we've also used we've had our kind of outside consultant we've worked with, and they've been also helpful in kind of going through the screening process. So I would say we're hiring as much as we are for values as we are for skill and experience.
Yeah.
And and I would say, although it's not written, the no asshole policy, where we want to make sure you've got the right. We spend more time with each other at work, and it's so important that the people that you're working with are they're part of that. You're part of a winning team.
Totally. And so over this past year, would you say that at the end of the day, you've come out stronger, both personally and professionally? And if so, what things are you going to try to really hold on to going forward?
Yeah, I would say personally, one of the things, I remember waking up in the middle of the pandemic, in the middle of the night, waking up in the morning thinking, oh my God, what's going on? Like, are we in a James Bond movie? Is some villain going to reveal himself? I would say from this idea of gratitude for me personally, which was so important. So every day just waking up and journaling what I was thankful for, because we have so much to be thankful for. I think we're so fortunate where we live, what we do, our children. And so that was personally, and not taking anything for granted. That was super, super important. And as a company, the same thing. I'm very grateful for the team we have. We kept it together. The fact that, we're able to continue operating in this way where we're just a bunch of people, right, with computers all working remotely. We're not physically making something. We don't have a factory per se, but it's all communication, right? Like, what do? I talk for a living, right? So, we write emails, but we're not physically, we're a lot of what we're doing is we're connecting people, and yeah, we're building software, and there's technology underlying all of this, but to make it all work. And so the fact that we were able to pull together and continue to do this, and I think it showed us, where we had some weaknesses, but we also a number of opportunities, and it really allowed us to take a step back and it's allowed me to take a step back and really take a more of a holistic view at our business. And so, like for example, one of the things we're really focused now on is which categories are driving, are more important and which ones are not, and where the opportunities lie, and kind of how we're doing everything. And so what the customer experience, what the customer journey looks like, and how do we improve on that, make it better. And so to us, from a member perspective, is that if we can reduce that friction and make it better, a lot of these things that we kind of implemented because during the pandemic, and we're gonna continue to see them through and build upon them.
Yeah, love it. And so how are you balancing all this? You've got a ton going on. You got the 3 kids.
Yeah.
You got the business. You're such an extrovert. I'm sure you're trying to fit in some social. What do you do to stay balanced personally?
I'm fortunate. I've got a great team. So one of the things I have been able to do is really, again, take myself out a lot of the day-to-day operations. But I've just got a Peloton, so that's certainly helping.
Is that brand new?
Yeah, fairly new. So
yeah, you have to tell me who you like. We'll have to ride together.
Okay, there you go. I think my kids keep me young, and that's always a lot of fun. And that to me is, if you told me before I was a dad that this is, because when you're single and not married, and it's like, this is, kids are just this amazing. I think they keep you youthful, and there's this amazing presence about them, innocence about them, and they grow up super fast, as you probably have seen as well. Yeah. And so I figure we're like halfway there. My oldest is 12, so it's like, okay, I got 6 more years, 2/3 of the way, right? And so, and then it's sort of like, he's off to the races. So definitely the children, and I think just trying to be very, very mindful. And I have a coach I work with, and just one of the things that we are working always on is kind of living in joy. What are the things that are driving joy? And for me, even as simple as this freedom, whereas I think before I felt a little more tethered to a desk, or, being now, the freedom to, I can go do a call and a walk at the same time.
Yeah, the pandemic has brought some of that, I have to say.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I'll do a call and walk my dog at the same time. And it just works out really good. And so I think Buffett said it best, is that when you're tap dancing on your way to work, you don't really think of it as work. And so it is a dance, and it's this collage, and you're kind of moving in and out, and it's been challenging. And my wife, she's, I got to take my hat off to her. She's been she doesn't have the luxury of being able to work from home. She's been on the front lines during the whole, medical piece of this, and doing that and being a mom. And,
yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, but we've been able to pull it together.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so glad you guys are doing so well. My final question for you is your ultimate fuel. Like, what is it? What fuels you?
What fuels me? I think what fuels me is being the reason why this business gets me excited. What I do, it's not even this business. it's when you're able to see 1 + 1 = 11. I just love connecting people, and so whether it's through BizX or not, but I'm like, hey, you two should get together. There's something there. Being that matchmaker, that fuels me because you're able to help both people, and
Yeah.
so I think that's why I'm in the business I'm in. But I love doing what I'm doing, and just being able to do that in a kind of in a genuine way where it's like, okay, here you go make something special.
Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, and follow us on social media to keep up with the latest news and episodes. You can also contact us at podcast@fueltalent.com to provide feedback, ask questions, and share topics or guests you would like us to cover in the future. We hope you feel inspired by our guests and that we have helped fuel your day. Join us next time for another episode of What Fuels You.